thank you, Lord, for placing the desire in this baby's heart to sing your praises. Praise be to God. And now, Lord, we ask, Lord, your blessing upon us, O Lord, as we stand and proclaim your word through the preached gospel. And we ask always, Lord, that your word will go forth like seed falling on fertile ground. Speak to us, O Lord, right now, as you always do. Your word and your word alone. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Church, say amen.
Amen.
The scripture we share, Colossians chapter 1. For background, today's scripture from Colossians generally is agreed that it was written by the Apostle Paul, who was an extraordinary man. He was born with the name Saul, not Paul, Saul. He became a Pharisee, and he was a violent enemy of Christianity, responsible for the arrest and persecution of many. But somehow God miraculously changed his heart, his mind, and his name. And Paul became one of the most important early Christian leaders, teachers and church planters, responsible for establishing at least 14 churches throughout the region, and responsible, God inspired, for writing at least 13 of the 27 books in the New Testament. Paul was an extraordinary God-inspired man. He was a church leader, and as a good church leader, there were times when Paul had to instruct or reprimand some of the early Christian churches to ensure they were teaching, preaching, and living consistent with God's word. If you read some of the Pauline letters or epistles found in the New Testament, and that includes, in addition to Colossians, that includes Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. And if you read these scriptures, these letters, you will learn so much about the essentials of our faith and how God is calling us to live and love in this world. And you'll also learn much about some of the problems, conflicts, and disagreements that occurred in the early churches, because these letters written by Paul were for a specific church or churches, specific church or churches, addressing specific problems that were occurring within those churches. Now, all sorts of problems, but for sake of time, most of these concerns or problems had to do with false teaching or the negative influence from secular culture or other philosophies and religions. As an example, Jews who converted to Christianity tried to incorporate their traditions into the Christian faith, like requiring Christians to be circumcised or demanding strict adherence to Old Testament laws. And Greeks and Romans converting to Christianity tried to explain things like the deity of Christ or salvation by incorporating Roman Greco philosophy and religion. And all this created confusion, misinformation, and conflict among early Christians. And Paul had to address it. Are you with me, church? All right. So now, we talked about this because opportunities for confusion, misinformation, and conflict still exist today. They still exist, and in some ways they are even more prevalent because of all the diversity of cultures and backgrounds that we are surrounded by. Many of us have been taught different things about faith. We've all been influenced by the secular world and political correctness and popular culture. Now, we've been blessed to live in a beautiful, diverse, and constantly changing world. But this also sometimes challenges us to stay Christ-centered or Christ-focused on how we should live our lives as Christians. If you're with me, church, let me hear you say amen. It's confusing sometimes. And unfortunately, we make mistakes. You know, we read verses like Galatians chapter 5, 19, 21. The word says the acts of the flesh are obvious. Sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. Or even in Colossians chapter 3, verse 5 and 6, the word says, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, greed, which is idolatry. You know, we read these things. But if you take time to really talk to your brothers and sisters about it, we don't all necessarily agree on what many of these things actually mean. We talk about the church and worship, and we all have different opinions about theology, worship, and just about everything we do in church. Now, I have no problem with diversity of opinion, as long as it doesn't diminish God's truth. But I think we fail to realize that much of the diversity of thought that we have about things of God, we have those thoughts. It's not godly influence, but it's worldly influence. And we must figure out ways to address the confusion, to avoid some of the same problems that occurred during Paul's time. There's nothing to gain from having confusion, misinformation, and conflict in the church, amen? In fact, it distracts us from focusing on what God truly wants us to do. We have all these different opinions. And I could go into some of the examples, but you know what I'm talking about. We argue about how we should worship, how we should dress, what we should eat, what we should sing, how we should administer the sacraments. I mean, there's all sorts of things we argue about. We even argue about the singularity and the importance of Jesus Christ. Is that a political correctness and desire to be in unity with folks outside the faith? We distort the gospel. There's so much of this going on, even in the